examination.
New town councilors and school board members, would you please, what do you want first? Council? With new councils? Yeah. New councilors, please join Debbie Lane in front.
Who's got the camera for the courier? Oh.
Nice one.
Raise your right hand and repeat after me. I solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution and will obey the laws of the United States and of the state of Maine, that I will, in all respects, observe the provisions of the Charter and ordinances of the town of Cape Elizabeth and statutes of the state of Maine, and will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of the Cape Elizabeth Town Council.
Now our new school board members, Craig Beeling and Elizabeth Courier. That's terrific.
I solemnly swear I will support the Constitution and will obey the laws of the United States and of the state of Maine, that I will, in all respects, observe the provisions of the Charter and ordinances of the town of Cape Elizabeth and statutes of the state of Maine, and will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of the Cape Elizabeth School Board.
Welcome to our newest members. Good luck to you. Thank you. Can we get the roll call, please?
Council Chappell?
Here.
Council Cogsall? Here. Council Creelman?
Here.
Council Dahlbeck?
Here.
Council Jordan?
Here.
Council Marvin? Here. Council McLaughlin?
Here. Would you please join me in the pledge to the flag? I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have minutes from two meetings for approval this evening. Meeting number 19 held May 10th, 1993, and special meeting number 20 held May 24th, 1993. Could I have a motion, please?
I move we approve.
Second.
All those in favor? 7-0. We will get this together. Could I please have the girls' tennis team come up front? With their coach. With their coach. Is this on? Excuse me, this is crooked. We are recognizing these folks for a very special recent accomplishment. Whereas the Cape Elizabeth girls tennis team recently won their 62nd straight match, whereas the most recent victory also resulted in the team winning their 4th consecutive state title, and whereas the team members had a total team effort with 15 girls all winning matches and earning letters, and whereas the town of Cape Elizabeth is proud of the achievements of these students. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Cape Elizabeth Town Council and Town Council assembled, that we hereby congratulate the Maine Class B girls tennis team and wish them well in their future tennis and academic endeavors. Dated this 14th day of June, 1993 at Cape Elizabeth, Maine. Congratulations, gals. There you go, Coach.
I just want to thank the council very much. It means a lot to a lot of the different teams as they go through winning some state championships, and it's nice to have some of these on the wall at home. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Coach Strout, you want to stay up here, please? Do we have representatives from the boys tennis team here? Come on down. If you knew this, you wouldn't have won so many games. Some very nice achievements from these gentlemen also. Whereas the Cape Elizabeth boys tennis team recently completed an undefeated season, and whereas the final game culminated in the team winning the Maine Class B boys tennis championship, and whereas the team won without losing a point, and whereas the boys were joined by the Cape Elizabeth girls team in sweeping both team titles for the first time since 1986, now therefore be it resolved by the Cape Elizabeth Town Council, in Town Council assembled, that we hereby congratulate the Maine State Class B boys tennis team, and we wish them well in future tennis and academic endeavors. Dated this 14th day of June, 1993 at Cape Elizabeth, Maine. Congratulations. We weren't doing things like that. Excuse the interruption, folks. It's always a pleasure to celebrate the kind of athletic students that we have at the high school. Both those teams won state titles. We recently also had a Western Maine Class B championship won by our boys baseball team. It was very special as well. On every agenda, we have a time for citizens' discussion of items not on the agenda. I think we've gone through most of this year without any of that happening, but I hear tonight Henry's not going to disappoint me.
Thank you very much. The town manager and I have had a lengthy discussion about Portland Headlight and the Fort Williams Park. Before I give a small synopsis, I do want to congratulate the chairman of the Cape Elizabeth Town Council and the town council for the many accomplishments that took place down there this year. We've got a beautiful museum in the Portland Headlight. The apartment is rented upstairs. We have an exceptional gift shop that is doing very well. The Garden Club of Cape Elizabeth has taken over the plantings around the rocks around by the gift shop. There has been a contest at SMBTI through Rick Churchill's class to design the plantings to be put around the front of the keeper's quarters. There has been a beautiful turnaround built in front of the lighthouse. The parking lot is beginning to take shape, and the fort in general is rather beautiful. However, there's one exception, and I think after I discuss this exception, I think that's where the improvements ought to cease for a while. The exception are those despicable, disgraceful portable toilets. Now, you may want to jest about them, but I get a great many telephone calls about those toilets, how disgusting they are, especially on Monday morning. And I think it's time that the Cape Elizabeth town council continued the action down at the fort and built some type of a toilet facilities near the parking lot, similar to the information booths that you find coming into the state, or similar to the toilets down at Tulite State Park. So that concludes my remarks, and all I want to do is challenge the new chairman of the next year's town council to get with the act. And if it's the person I think it is, we need some cleaner latrines there, Colonel.
Thank you, Mr. Adams. Would anybody else like to address the council at this time on items not on the agenda? No, they're leaving instead. We will have reports and correspondence from the councilors.
Madam Chairman,
Sir.
Regional Waste Services, we met on May the 20th and postponed the vote on the Gorham facility till June the 24th. Week from Thursday is the big night. It's going to take 3/4 of the people there, 28 of us. It'll take 21 for the Gorham project to pass. It's one of those things like you have in Washington every now and then. It's very doubtful which way it's going to go right now. But we'll report to you in the July meeting. Finance Committee met on May the 26th. Our Finance Committee chairman is a wonderful gentleman. He loves to meet at 7:30 a.m. in the morning. And we met again on June the 10th and completed the finance budget for the coming year for Regional Waste Services, and we'll also present that to the board on June the 24th. That should be a very interesting meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else? Councilor Cogswell.
Yes, last Friday, Councilor Chappell and I attended the dedication ceremony of the Main Responder, which is the new oil cleanup ship that is going to be in our port regularly. It represents the Northeast region, and we had an extensive tour, and it was really amazing the amount of equipment they have, and they explained the whole process, the whole detail, how they will be training other ships in the area that can accommodate a secondary generator to help assist them, and Representative Thomas Andrews and former Representative Brennan were also present at the ceremonies.
Just give Councilor Dahlbeck a start there.
Myself as well.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? Councilor Creelman.
Yes, over the weekend, some might have seen the welcome on the Public Safety Building marquee to the National League of Cities Human Development Steering Committee. I had the privilege of hosting the steering committee at the Portland Regency from Thursday night until Saturday night. And the meeting was very, very successful. There were about 35 mayors and council members from really from Pasadena, California to Tallahassee, Florida, who came to fine-tune our municipal policy that National League of Cities represents in Washington for all of us. And I wanted to publicly thank 4 people who really made the meeting as successful as it was. Congressman Thomas Andrews addressed our group with respect to his own thoughts about health care reform. They were very timely, very on the mark. He did a great job. Governor John McKernan also addressed our group with respect to our subcommittee on youth education and families, and he shared with us his youth apprenticeship program, and again was very much on the mark, and we were most appreciative of his being able to squeeze out time in his very busy schedule. And thirdly, District Attorney Stephanie Anderson gave us a very fine synopsis of the whole history of the last 10 years of crime and violence in Cumberland County, which was very apropos to our subcommittee that studies crime and violence. But lastly, really in some ways the most important person who really made this conference so successful was Barbara Ray here in Town Hall. She just put in an extraordinary amount of time behind the scenes with respect to the dinners that we had, the tour that she arranged so people could really have a flavor of kind of the taste of Maine. And I know that when I visit other places with this group in the future, that they will continue to be commenting on really the wonderful time they had in Cape Elizabeth. And I really would like to publicly thank Barbara Ray for all of her very, very fine work that she did in behalf of the National League of Cities. Thank you.
Super, thank you. Last Friday, I was asked by our fire chief to say a welcome to a group that he had visiting here in town. It was the executive board of the International Association of Fire Chiefs. Not a very large group, but a very hard-working group that involves itself with policy at the national and international level, and quite an interesting crew, as you can imagine. Councilor Chappell and I have recently had a very heartwarming experience. I think that would be a good word to use. We were both involved as adult supervisors for the senior service projects that 15 of the high school Cape Elizabeth seniors were participating in for the past 2.5 weeks. And it was absolutely a terrific experience. These seniors went out into the community, both Cape Elizabeth community and the greater Portland community, to do volunteer work for 2 weeks, then came back in to do a wrap-up project, and found it just wonderful to hear some of them say that this was the best memory they will have of their senior year. It was pretty special. I do want to thank Councilor Chappell for being involved in that. It was a good time. Item number 1 is to consider the election of Town Council Chairman and take any necessary action. Councilor Dahlbeck?
Yes, I would like to move that E. Irving Chappell become chairman of the Town Council for the forthcoming year.
I will second that motion. All those in favor? All those opposed? Enthusiastic 7-0.
I'm going to oppose it.
Now you're going to take care of that.
I can't do that. Pardon me?
I always like to let Janet get all sit down and then call her down front again. Come on, Janet. Get back at her for all last year. Thank you very much for your support to serve as Town Council Chairman for the upcoming year. As this new Town Council year begins, I wish to acknowledge the very fine leadership provided by Janet McLaughlin this past year. Janet did a tremendous job in improving communications with town boards and commissions through workshops each month. She was instrumental in planning various activities commemorating the opening of the Portland Headlight. She was concurrently served as the founder and first chairman of the Cumberland County Mayors and Chairs Group and as vice president of the Greater Portland Council of Governments. She encouraged the town to be more active with the business community through membership in the Chamber of Commerce, and Janet served on the board of directors of the Greater Portland Economic Growth Council. This past week, she was elected to a 3-year term on the board of directors of the United Way of Greater Portland. If there has been any task to perform, Janet has been ready to do it. On behalf of the Town Council, I wish to present Janet with this past chairman's plaque. She has done an outstanding job for our community, and we all look forward to her continuing leadership as a member of the Town Council.
Thank you very much, Irv. We had to make sure we get the right things out of here. It's not the whole pad, trust me. Last June, this council set for itself 7 goals, and I'm very pleased to remind us that we did accomplish a lot towards those goals. Not towards all 7 of them, but a lot towards them. One of them, as Irv referred to, was our communications, and we did hold conferences, meetings, workshops with our boards and commissions, which I believe is going to serve us well, already has, will continue to serve us well. And that was one of my personal goals from last year, is to work on that kind of communication. Second goal this council worked on was getting towards a capital improvement plan. I think we've made very good progress on that in the past year and look forward to continuing progress along that. Another goal we had for ourselves was to maintain the rideability of our roads. Shore Road is a wonderful example of the attention that we've been able to pay to that. Another one was to maintain and procure open space. I think we did superbly along those lines with the Larea property and the path work that's going on at Great Pond. And one that we will continue work on this evening is the town center plan. So I think we did a very good job in the past year as a council. It's nice to have a couple of minutes to sit back and say, yes, we did accomplish a lot together as this council, and I'm delighted I could have been part of it. I did have, as I said, some personal goals. One of them was to have the town council be involved in personnel appreciation. It's a little late for my term, but we're going to be doing something specific along those lines next Friday, June 25th, where we're closing all but essential services at 2 o'clock that Friday, and the town council is going to cook at a cookout for our municipal staff. We're looking forward to that. Another personal goal I had was to obtain community input for the Ralph Gould Award. We were very successful in doing that. We had an article in the Cape Courier, and the result of that was the wonderful presentation we were able to make last month of that Ralph Gould Citizen Award to Loretta Pond. Certainly a highlight for me as a council chairman this year. Every year, we are able to finish some things that have been started in the past, and we also start some things that we hope will carry forward into the future. Two of the very good things that I will remember that we were able to accomplish that had actually been started in the past were the naming of Plaisted Park and the naming of the Edmund Capano softball field. Absolutely the highlight of the year for me was something that a lot of the current councilors had a part in getting started. That was the dedication of the museum at Portland Headlight. It was a while ago, but it was a fantastic day and a wonderful ceremony and just an absolutely wonderful accomplishment for everybody who took part. Things that we have started in this past year and with our long-term focus we'll be continuing work on are the recommendations made by our Service Delivery Options Committee, the Town Center Plan that we'll be looking at later this evening, our School Building Committee, the recommendations from which will have very significant ramifications for the entire community, the Portland Water District rate case, in which our manager took a very significant leadership role, and we do thank him for that, and our pocketbooks thank him for that also. We have undertaken the beginning of revisions to our sewer policy, and we are tonight looking at some revisions to our comprehensive plan. Throughout all of this, the important thing for me certainly has been the input from so many people. Somebody, when they were talking about how are you going to wrap up what you did for the year, it gets kind of touchy-feely, and they were saying this a little bit apologetically. I will never apologize for the touchy-feely aspect of what I do, because I know that people are the most important thing in this community. Without them, we would not be where we are today. We have so many people in this community who volunteer their time and their talents with no strings attached and make this a better place for all of us. And those are the thank yous that I want to put forth to the people who serve on our boards and commissions and our special committees, to my fellow councilors. I personally really appreciate your patience and your cooperation that you have shown for me in the past year. I know very well how much work goes into your serving. And I thank you all for being here. Look forward to serving with you for another year. Thank you to Mr. McGovern. We have a very capable and savvy manager. Thank you for being here on my watch. I want to thank our department heads and our staff. We have a very dedicated group of people We have a very professional group of people. We have a lot of people who work under these department heads, either in a staff level or volunteer level. They all need to be thanked for their input. And lastly, I have a heartfelt thanks to my daughters. Thank you.
Get this back to hit you with? Okay. As the year begins, I wish to set forth for the Town Council consideration a number of objectives for the year. Number one, we need to resolve the issue of the poor farm once and for all this year. The resolution should include an agreement with the state, policies on how we will utilize trust assets to help the poor, and how we will utilize the property over the long term. Second, the Board of Sewer Appeals will soon present a report to the Town Council on sewer ordinance issues. We need to reform our sewer policies to ensure a system that is both environmentally and economically sound. This summer, the Town Council will receive a report on school building needs at the elementary and middle school levels. I look forward to reviewing the report and having a citizen vote on the plan this November. Several years ago, the Municipal Facilities Committee, in fact it was in 1990, identified crucial space needs in the public safety area. We need to dust off the report and determine where these space needs will be addressed. We need to study how to mesh school needs with the other community needs. It's really going to be a job this next year, 2, and 3. Taxes must be kept within the rate of inflation. This will not be possible if the school project is approved by the voters, but we must keep other spending restrained as has been done in recent years. I was very pleased with the 1.25% of the municipal side of the budget that was finally passed by your council for 1994. A great job, in my estimation, by the council. 1.25% increase in the inflation year of a little over 3. Local government must continue to be enjoyable for all who participate. We must continue to recognize the exceptional work done by our boards and commissions and by our staff. We must put continued emphasis on improving communications with these 3. Finally, we, the Town Council, will continue to work as effectively as we can with healthy debate on the future of our community. I look forward to the upcoming year and know that it will be successful as we continue to work cooperatively together. And before I say thank you and end this, I've had to add a PS tonight. Add one objective: toilet facilities for Fort Williams. Thank you. We're going right along now. We said that we'd be done with this part of the program by 8 o'clock. We've done it. Now, item 2, to consider the adoption of the rules of the Cape Elizabeth Town Council and take any necessary action. Councilor Marvin. No, I'm sorry.
It's not on the, it's
Not on the
crib sheet.
Somebody moved it. No wonder we can't do it.
Mr. Chairman, I'd be very happy to move acceptance of the rules of the Cape Elizabeth Town Council set forth before us this evening.
Second.
Okay, she's second.
All those in favor? Thank you, 7-0. Now we'll get to item number 3, to consider the appointment of a finance committee and take any necessary action. Councilor Marvin.
I'd like to move the name of William Jordan as our finance chair for the next year.
I'll second.
Happy to second that also. Following our script.
All those in favor? 7-0. Item number 4, to consider the appointment of an ordinance committee and take any necessary action.
As Councilor Cogsall has done such an outstanding and exemplary job over the last couple of years, I would move that she again take the helm of the ordinance committee.
And the other committee members are?
And the other committee members that will join her at the helm will be William Jordan and Richard Dahlbeck. And I would move acceptance of all 3.
Second that.
All those in favor? 7-0. Number 5, to consider the appointment of an appointments committee and take any necessary action.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I wish to nominate Wayne L. Creelman, M.D., as chairman, since he has done such an exemplary job this past year. Also has continued for this month. Joining him would be Eugene Ginn Marvin and Janet McLaughlin.
Mr. Chairman, I'll second that motion.
All those in favor? 7-0. To consider the election of representatives to serve on the Greater Portland Council of Governments Executive Committee and General Assembly and take any necessary action.
Mr. Chairman,
Councilor Jordan.
I would like to nominate Councilor McLaughlin for the COG Executive Committee. She's been active in the local governments around, and I think she's doing an outstanding job for us in the ensuing year.
Might want to do the COG General Assembly?
Oh, and the COG General Assembly. I forgot that one. I didn't know she wanted 2 jobs, but I think she's got 3 already.
She doesn't.
What's your names?
Who would you like on that General Assembly with?
Oh, Gene Ginn Garvin, how's that? Wayne L. Creamers and Michael K. McGovern, town manager, as the alternate. I should have kept it in front of me and I'd wrote it on that one.
I will second that.
All those in favor? 7-0. Thank you. To consider the appointment of a council representative to serve on the Board of Directors of Regional Waste Systems Incorporated and take any necessary action.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to put forth your name as our representative to Regional Waste Systems with Councilor Jordan as the alternate.
I'd like to second that.
All those in favor? 7-0. To consider the appointment to the Portland Area Comprehensive Transportation Committee, that's PACS, and take any necessary action.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move the name of Michael K. McGovern, our town manager, forward, please.
I'll second.
All those in favor? 7-0. Moving right along. Now, we got 3 public hearings tonight. We'll start probably each one with either the staff or the manager giving us, to kind of get us wound up and get going into it, and then we'll open it up to the public for comments from you. The first one, item number 9, is on the comprehensive plan. Mr. McGovern, who's going to start us on that one?
Would you like me to?
Yeah.
For the last several months, 6 months or so, the Town Council's Ordinance Committee, led by Councilor Cogswell, has been reviewing the comprehensive plan with an aim toward bringing it into compliance with the state growth management law. The changes that they're recommending are primarily simply in the area of technical amendments. There really aren't any substantive changes, although copies of it have been circulated for the public to be able to review. We also did send copies of the comprehensive plan to surrounding communities and to the State Department of Economic and Community Development, which is responsible for approving the plan. The State Department of Economic and Community Development commented that they thought it was an exceptional plan, really outstanding. I need to use those terms again, but those were their words, and cited 2 small concerns within the plan. The first is that they were looking for the capital improvement plan, and unfortunately, apparently mislaid it because they were provided a copy somewhere along the way, and in discussions with them today, they indicated that as long as we forward it back to them, that wouldn't pose a problem. Secondly, they expressed concern with our sewer policies in that they did not think perhaps that we directly addressed how we were going to solve the sewer issues, sewer problems in Cape Elizabeth. Late this afternoon, I had a discussion with John Del Vecchio, who is the head of the Office of the head of Comprehensive Planning within the Office of Economic and Community Development, and explained to him the very tedious and dedicated work the Board of Sewer Appeals has been doing studying the sewer issue. Explained to him the number of meetings that they had about where they stood. He implied that that was rather good progress, and that, you know, what we're really talking about now is implementation instead of just a plan. He did need to check with Mr. Nichols, who was the author of the letter commenting to the town, but you know, I was left with good feelings as to where the state might stand on our plans. So
that is the report, and, I'd be happy to go into more detail if anyone desires or answer any questions. Maureen O'Meara, who is the town planner and worked very closely with the ordinance committee as well as with the planning board over several years now, it seems, reviewing this, is also here to answer any detailed questions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. McGovern or Ms. O'Meara? What's your pleasure?
Are we going to have the public hearing?
Oh, yeah, we're going to, I was hoping we...
Irv likes short meetings, so we'll cut out a few.
Is there anybody
minutes.
from the public that would like to talk on this issue or ask questions? Please do so now. If you would like to, come down to the podium and give your name and where you live and away you go. Hey, that's good. Hearing none, we'll close the public hearing. And on item 9, I'll entertain a motion. Councilor Coggins.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we accept the proposed amendments to the comprehensive plan
Second.
as presented.
Discussion. All those in favor? So moved. 9-0. Second public hearing, item number 10, to consider proposed amendments to the subdivision ordinance relating to road standards and take any necessary action. That's Councilor Coggins, would you like to address that one, or would you like to have the manager?
I think Mr. McGovern would prefer that I do it.
All right.
Is that what you were looking at me like that for? Okay.
And what's the process?
Okay, we have before us recommendations for changing the classification of some of the road standards. The impetus was initiated by the code enforcement officer, who found that there were several roads that were classified as higher use roads than were actually being used that way, and the prospect of their ever being used in that that old category were minimal, along with the comprehensive plan recommending that we have roads that reflect more our sense of wanting to be a rural or less suburban, a rural community. So we have before us tonight the reclassification of some roads, which now makes some property that was originally non-conforming more conforming in that they can meet the setbacks for the roads. We have new definitions that have been added, definition of access road, arterial, collector, esplanade, feeder, local street, private road, rural connector. We have a classification table with an enlarged turning radius for our new ladder truck. We also have tree and street species and a minimum size list that will be developed probably by the tree warden in conjunction with the planning board for inclusions as an appendix to the subdivision ordinance. New road cross-sections, including a teardrop cul-de-sac design reflecting the new standards, will be drawn by the town engineer for inclusion in the subdivision ordinance. There also is a recommendation that all references to street be changed to road in the new ordinance. We may want to discuss that possibly as a separate topic, but at present I'll present them as a package.
Okay. Public hearing is open to the public. If anybody would like to comment on the road standards, if so, please come up to the podium. Hearing none, we'll close the public hearing. Any discussion by members of the council or questions? Janet.
Thank you, sir. In looking at the road classification standards table on page 3 of the papers that I have, under on-street parking, there is a provision to allow on-street parking on collectors, have they either paved or unpaved shoulders, and on rural connectors. This would be Mitchell Road, Scott Dyer Road, Shore Road, Charles E. Jordan Road, Fowler Road south of Bowery Beach Road, Old Ocean House Road, Sawyer Road, Spurwink Ave, Two Lights Road from Wheeler Road to Beacon Lane, and Wells Road. My understanding is that if this language is adopted as put forth, that parking would be allowed on those streets. Is that still correct? You know,
Parking prohibitions can only be enacted by vote of the town council. You know, you would, in order to change parking provisions, you would need a specific vote changing them. Simply changing the classification does not change the parking standard. The only automatic change in parking standard would be if you changed an area to a business zone and it happened to be a bikeway. And that's the only area that would change automatically. In no instance does this do that.
okay, I remain uncomfortable with saying that parking is, that on-street parking is allowed on the majority of those streets that are listed as collectors or the rural connectors. I have talked with the town planner about this, and I've talked with the police chief about this. When Chief Pickering and I discussed it, he was, quite frankly, aghast at the thought of encouraging almost on-street parking on some of those roads. And I have not spent a lot of time with this. I don't know what the other ramifications would be if we put no's instead of yeses in those boxes. A couple of points that the police chief brought out and dealt with the seasonal problems that we have when we have snow banks that sometimes make the pavement area even more narrow than normal. And there's also a concern down by Kettle Cove that there might be some parking on the roads from beachgoers. So I would like to have the council consider to consider revising what's before us tonight and making those 3 yeses into no's for the on-street parking. I think then if we have to deal with it in another parking section of the ordinance, we can do that. But I feel very uncomfortable with this being an encouragement of on-street parking on those roads. Thank you.
I have a question.
Councilor Dahlbeck, sorry.
Yes, Councilor McLaughlin raises an issue that really, I think, is an issue on this particular table. I raised it once before. The table shows some speed limits which are quite contrary to some of the speed limits. For example, based on this table, all of Route 77 would have a speed limit of 30 to 45 miles an hour. And I think there seems to be implicit in the fact that this table is included in this, that these are sacrosanct figures, whether it relates to speed limit or whether it relates to parking. I know in speed limits, it was explained when I raised that issue the last time this came up, that speed limits are set otherwise by the state or what have you, and I think the net result is that the table's confusing.
Councilor Collins, do you have something?
I was just going to ask Mr. McGovern, since we already have parking bans in certain areas along these roads, by accepting this table does not revoke those parking standards or prohibitions, because those would still be in existence, isn't that correct?
Yeah, as Councilor Dahlbeck indicated, speed limits are set by the state, and parking limits have to be specifically listed within the traffic schedule of the ordinance. You know, if there's any, unclear views on that, and if you do want to adopt this tonight, you should perhaps, make that part of the motion to make absolutely clear.
I think the part should be where this ordinance references the road classification standards table, what is meant and what is not meant by those standards. Because right now, in 2 specific areas, it's very confusing. These are not standards, these are not the laws, or would not be if we passed them. And I think that ought to be clear. However you do that.
Councilor Jordan.
Yeah, I just want to say I was on the ordinance committee and reviewed that, and I feel it's an oversight, it's really an oversight on my part. And I think they should be reviewed again, because I don't think we should put into an ordinance that something is allowed and then try to post a road through other methods that it's not allowed. And I think that area should be reviewed and come back to the council at a later date.
Would you make that a motion, Mr. Councilor Jordan, so we can act on it?
was just kind of getting the pulse of someone else up here, but if nobody seems to be too concerned about it, I'll make a motion that we table this ordinance until a later date, completely.
I would second that motion.
Been moved and seconded. We table this ordinance till this section is reviewed and bringing it back to the council at a future date. Any discussion on that motion?
You're looking the wrong way.
I'm over you.
Always look at me. I do not concur that we should table the whole ordinance until a later date. We must also realize that this ordinance closely ties in with a new sign ordinance, and that certain provisions that would be allowed in the sign ordinance will not be allowed if we do not accept some of the reclassification. We could, however, postpone or reconsider those two particular items and direct the ordinance committee to bring those back in a future date. We can accept if we agree that the rest of the ordinance is appropriate.
You want to make that an amendment, or should we get rid of that first motion and then you...
We've got a motion on the floor we can vote on.
Okay. Any other discussion? We're voting on the motion that we table it, be reviewed, and we bring it back at a later date to the council. All those in favor, raise their right hand.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, I have a comment before, if I may. I would just like to get the feeling of the council whether this is a significant change in the ordinance, and if it is, it's going to go to another public hearing.
Based on what I've heard, it doesn't sound like a significant change as much as it sounds like a clarification of what ordinances do apply.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, I think if there's contemplation at changing whether or not parking is or is not allowed in front of a series of homes on a street, that probably is a subject of much public concern. Even though the public is not aware of this, my past experience is if you change something as drastic to folks as whether or not they can park in front of their home, sometimes they get very excited about it. And, if there is going to be a change in this area, it'd be nice to have the citizens know what's allowed in front of their properties.
But is that the issue, or is the issue whether another ordinance that is voted on separately prevails, or does this prevail? In other words, I personally think it's a clarification that we're dealing with here. We have a couple things that are in conflict with other ordinances, rules, regulations, state statutes, and/or whatever. And one ends up being a little confused about what prevails.
I think it depends on how it's resolved, and maybe the council ought to revisit that when it returns to them, whether or not you feel it's significant enough change to merit another public hearing.
We have a motion and a second that we've got to get rid of. That this be tabled, reviewed, and brought back to the council. All those in favor, please raise their right hand. All those opposed? Okay, now we can start all over again. May I have a motion?
Well, I would move that we accept these proposed amendments on the road standards, with the one exception of the on-street parking issue, and the understanding would be that there would be no change as of tonight with regard to what the current ordinance language is for on-street parking. We would revisit this particular issue through the ordinance committee, and then we would bring that back to the public, and in the context decide whether it merited enough value to be a full public hearing or not as a portion of the ordinance.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded.
Discussion? Yeah, I'll still go back to the speed issue. There's confusion between having a table, such as this table in an ordinance, which says the speed limits on certain roads will be thus and such, and other rules, regulations, and state statutes or whatever have a different approach for setting the speed limits, and I don't think we ought to have that type of confusion. And it's not clear in here. I know what the intent was, but it's just not clear here.
Could we ask our expert, our planner, because as far as I can see, we only have one road, the arterial road, which is 77, that really is under state regulation, isn't it, for speed limit, the rest of the town? Do we have a couple others? Okay.
Route 77, Shore Road, Mitchell Road,
Shore
Sawyer
Road.
Road, Sperling.
On the issue of speed, I'd like to apologize to the council. I think the problem is that, in working with the planning board for over 2 years on this, after a period of time, you begin to think in a certain mode and you lose some of your perspective. But the column speed here should probably say design speed, and you're interpreting it rather as a speed limit. Nothing in this whole table, nothing in any of the amendments in front of you changes any existing speed limit in town. What this is intended to do is, right now when we have developers come in and design a road, they design a wide, flat, straight road, which under our engineering requirements, you could post up to 45, 55 miles an hour. And the planning board was very uncomfortable with the ways those roads were looking, and so that's why we have the speed column in here. And again, it should say design speed. What this is doing is this is telling an engineer when he comes in to design a subdivision that the road they're designing should not exceed the speed range that is in this column unless there's a very good reason for it. For example, if they're already working on a very flat, straight piece of road. And in terms of the on-street parking, I think it was just something that, again, that in looking at all of the standards here, that particular provision just did not get a lot of attention. The one other thing I would like to point out is these are amendments to the subdivision ordinance. They'll never be used unless someone wants to divide land. These do not regulate how the town could build a road if they wanted to. You would hope that you would want to use these standards, but the only time they come into play is when someone is dividing land and building a road. Any questions?
Thank you. That help you, Councilor Bell?
That helps me as long as the table is revised to read design speed.
I'd be happy to add that into, that issue.
And I'll second it that way.
Councilor Jordan?
I understand what the planner has said as far as the design speed, but that bothers me is that they can't design, if this is a design speed, you don't design a road for a speed over 45, because that's the top speed on any one of these arterial roads and what have you. And I just feel putting in an ordinance, a speed, and then have it being contradicted with a road sign of another speed, to me, I don't feel that it's necessary. I think if you've got design standards for a road, you have design standards for a road. You don't have to tie it with the speed of the road.
Don't you agree, though, Councilor Jordan, if we pass this motion that we've got moved here and seconded, and this is brought back to us when these things are corrected, we certainly can look at it again, can't we?
I agree with that if we're going to do that, but while you had added to the motion, and you even seconded that, we're not going to do that at this moment.
Wayne, would you give us your motion again, please? Okay, you got it, Deb?
I have the intent, yes.
Subject to editorial
It was a
license.
wordy one, I'll admit it. Well, but again, if I can only comment, this is only with regard to new subdivisions.
New subdivision.
This is not like all the towns in Cape Elizabeth. It's only going to apply to the section of new subdivisions. So, I mean, I can't conceive of a new subdivision that's going to be 55 miles an hour.
I could hardly conceive of a new subdivision with an arterial.
Well, that's, yeah, so I mean, it's...
So, but that confuses the whole thing further.
Well, I guess it does. I mean, But, I don't know, I ignore that part. I mean, it's not going to apply. Simple as that, I mean. I think for the purposes of moving this particular public hearing and moving the acceptance of the road standards, my motion, the intent of the motion was to move it with the exception of the one issue of the on-street parking, because that can be revisited by the ordinance committee. We can come up with a more reasonable idea, looking at the actual, right-of-way distances to decide the public safety factor with regard to parking on particular right-of-way distances. And if indeed Billy said that issue wasn't addressed as much as it could have been, we need to revisit it, that's all. But I hate to hold up the whole ordinance for that one piece. So my motion is still on the table. I still think there's a second.
Phyllis?
I did second
seconded it,
your-
yes. Any other discussion?
Yes, excuse me. Councilman McLaughlin.
Thank you. I guess a question back to the planner, please. I'm looking at the definition for arterial, and I'm wondering, excuse me, if that definition and the proposed design speed, excuse me, for arterial, realistically go hand in hand.
I don't believe that the current amendments before you change the design speeds all that much, except they lower them a lot. When we were working with this ordinance, I don't know when this was originally written, but there are originally 3 classifications, and we found them to be very excessive. The table you have before you was supposed to give you a range. It doesn't mean that all portions of Route 77 would be designed up to 45 miles an hour. It gives the planning board, if they were ever to deal with this issue in some fashion, a range, and that I can clearly see the board in some areas saying that, this is Route 77, and the design speed for Route 77 is between 30 and 45, and we believe in this area you should be working on the 30 mile per hour design speed. In terms of the definitions of the streets, originally you had 3 streets: arterial, feeder, and minor. And quite honestly, when you read the definition of the street, there was absolutely no guidance to the planning board on how a street should be classified. The council 2 years ago asked the planning board to reclassify some streets, and we went to the definitions, and there was just no help there in determining whether a street really functioned as an arterial or as a feeder. So what we tried to do when we worked on the definitions, and quite honestly, that was just a 6-month process just on that, was to think about what are the factors that made a road important. And the definitions you have right now just look at traffic volume. They don't look at the settlement pattern on either side of the road. They don't look at the type of use or function that the road serves in the community. And so the definitions you have right now are much more specific. They give a lot more guidance. And certainly any definition you have here, you'll be able to find a portion of that road somewhere in town that doesn't quite fit this definition. But generally, it's supposed to let you know that a local road may get a lot of traffic, but that it's slow-moving traffic, it's generally serving residential areas. Arterial streets have a lot of traffic. It's fast-moving traffic. And what is the kind of settlement pattern on either side of that road? It's mostly residential, but it's also fairly open. Those were the things we were trying to get at. This is why you have 5 categories of road classifications now instead of the original 3. We just decided that, for example, the rural connector, I think, is one of the brainchild of one of the planning board members, is, to me, one of the definitions of the town. There are roads in this community that I believe imply what the meaning of rural character is in this town, and you won't find a rural connector in any other community in this area. Most communities have the same exact definitions that you have: arterial, feeder, and minor. And what this does is starts to tailor your road classifications to your specific community. I think that goes a lot further than what you wanted for an answer.
Perfectly all right. I'm just concerned that what we have in black and white be realistic, and that everything mesh together properly. If you've got a road where we're defining it as a road that's going to carry over 3,000 trips a day, if it is realistic to have a speed limit from 30 to 45 degrees, miles an hour, whatever you're measuring on a road with that volume. And I want, just to stay within that realm of reality. So, if design speed is what it is to be, perhaps there could be a note about this being for future roads or based on the development patterns or something. I know in the ordinance committee, the couple of meetings I attended, where there was discussion about were all of these standards applicable for every single section of some of our longer roads, and the general feeling, I believe, was that they are not, because the roads do differ in character tremendously as they transverse the town. So I don't know if we need to get any more complicated with this than we are now, but I do appreciate, upcoming attention to help me understand at least about the parking situation and looking at how anything that we put into this section of the ordinance does jibe with the traffic schedule that's in the ordinance. I need that help from the ordinance committee.
We did spend an entire meeting reviewing the roads and feeling that sections of roads that were classified, say, as the collector road, that a section of it really wasn't. It was more like a feeder road. And so we did go through and retabulate some of the roads and reclassify them. We spent a whole evening on that, didn't we, Bill?
That's correct.
So those sections, the roads are exempted from the original classification. They've been reclassified to meet the characteristics.
Any other discussion? We got a motion that we've got, yes, Councilor Jordan.
I would just like to say it is something that was discussed at the ordinance committee, and maybe the town planner can clear my mind on it. Like a road connector is 66 feet wide, but a collector with a shoulder, an unpaved shoulder, is only 50 feet wide. Arterial is 52 feet. Why did I end up with a 66-foot wide road connector?
Again, I want to emphasize that this table would apply to someone who is coming forward for approval for a subdivision. So I see the rural connector, that particular provision perhaps coming into effect if someone wanted to propose a subdivision off of a road that was called a rural connector, and there will be discussion about what kind of improvements might be needed along the frontage of that land that is fronting on the rural connector. You're right, that has the widest right-of-way that's requested, and what that means is not that anyone who has frontage on a rural connector is all of a sudden going to lose 8 feet of their land. What it means is when you come forward with your subdivision, that there's a discussion that then ensues between you and the planning board about perhaps additional donation of right-of-way along the frontage of your property in addition to any right-of-way you may be dedicating to town for the construction of a new road off of the rural connector. The reason that the 66-foot right-of-way was recommended is, again, if you think about some of the roads that are designated as rural connectors, such as Wells Road and Sawyer Road and Spurwink Avenue, those roads have been considered by the planning board and have been recognized in the visual assessment study as roads that have a lot of scenic value, that they determine part of the character of the town. And there was a concern that this was one way to protect the scenic character. While the subdivision ordinance does require that new developments have to buffer their development from adjacent properties, the experience has been, in fact, that we haven't been all that successful in buffering a development from the roadway. So that while we may be acquiring lots of natural open space in the rear of the parcel, we weren't getting anything that preserved the rural character along the road. Oftentimes, any natural vegetation that was supposed to be maintained for some reason or other was lost during construction, either through regrading or little overzealousness on the part of the lot owners. So the intent was that if we were not being that successful in having the lot owners preserve this buffer strip, then instead we would have the town own a wider buffer strip, and the town would take control of it and make sure that that natural vegetation stayed there and preserved what we call our rural character. So that's why that 66 feet is there.
Okay,
Any other questions?
don't agree with it, but okay.
I just wanted to add two more comments that also included in this new ordinance is, it is now giving the town council the authority to change the classifications of roads, where previously it was the planning board. And that in private roads, in subdivisions now will have required construction standards, and these are all defined, because we have found that developers come in and build, quote, a private road so they don't have to meet construction standards, sell their lots and leave town, and then the owners of all the lots in that subdivision find that the road will not meet the standards that would allow the town to accept it and maintain it. And it's not fair to these new property owners when they come in and assume that the road has been constructed that way.
Thank you. Any other discussion?
One other comment, and I don't know whether the ordinance committee chairman mentioned it or not, I might have missed it along the way. I want you to understand that there's no more streets in Cape Elizabeth after we adopt this. They're all going to be roads from now on in the naming of any way, so you can't have a street in Cape Elizabeth. I want you to understand that.
That was what I meant in my presentation, saying maybe this should be a twofold vote, because I share a concern in converting all the word street to roads, even though we do have wonderful computers, that in the past when things have been transposed like that, sections have been lost or something's been dropped that changed the meaning. And I would seriously hope that there would be a proofreading committee established to make sure that if we do want them to go through and change the word street to road, that the whole ordinance is proofread to make sure that it is complete.
Thank you.
Just one
I'm not
clarification for
volunteering.
anyone who may be watching who lives on a street. This would not change the name of any street to road, this action of something that's already been named street.
Thank you. Any other discussion? You ready to vote?
Could we know what the motion is, please? I just need
Yes,
clarification.
we'll go over that
It
once
wasn't
more.
long ago.
Wade, would you repeat your motion, please?
Well, by now, I'm going to ask the town clerk.
Your intent is to accept the amendment, accept the on-street parking issue, which will be forwarded back to the ordinance committee for review. The ordinance committee will then send recommendations back to the town council. At that time, the town council will decide whether or not it was a substantial change to set another public hearing if, in fact, that chart is changed for on-street parking. You also clarified the chart to state design speed instead of just speed, I guess it said.
Thank you.
We have a motion. We have it seconded.
Mr. Chairman, I thought they withdrew that design standard deal. They didn't. You accepted it. Okay, thank you.
All those in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
6 to
6-1. 7-0. I knew we'd get it. We waited long enough.
6 to 1, according to Murphy's Law. 7 to nothing, according to...
Next public hearing is on the town center plan. This one should be easy after the last one. Item 11. We'll go into the public hearing part first. Mr. Foley, are you going to take us into this? Is that why I see you sitting out there, I hope?
Yes, Chairman.
Well, stop.
I have been asked to represent Bruce Cogashell
So forth, fine.
to offer any assistance I can.
there
I'd
anything
be
you'd
glad
like
to
to say,
expand or whatever is your wishes desire.
Okay. That's fine. The public hearing is open. Is there anybody from the public that has a question for Mr. Foley? Please state it. Anybody? Hearing none from the public hearing is closed. We will now have questions, comments from anybody on the council for Mr. Foley. Any questions?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Foley isn't going to give us an overview.
He was going to, but he didn't need to.
Okay, thank you. May I comment first?
Yes.
I don't have nothing against your plan, and I have nothing against any of the work that you've done. I want to throw that at the outset, but I don't agree with what is being ordered here tonight. I don't feel that I'm ready to adopt that plan. I'm ready to accept it and to review it, and as I read the item here, having held a public hearing on June 14, 1993, does hereby adopt the report. I'm not ready to adopt the report. I have a couple of problems with it, and one of my problems is that I don't think that we have to have in a document to adopt is that we direct the town manager to request the Department of Public Works to clean up the brush along the eastern side of Route 77. I think they should clean the brush if it's necessary and hazardous, regardless it's on the eastern side of 77 or the western side of Wells Road or Sawyer Street or Woodland Road. Any road, it should be done. And I feel that shouldn't be in the policy. And number two, that was number two. And then I'm in agreement if we adopt this and the planning board is responsible for developing a town center zone, they can develop it and then it can come back to the council. And this, to me, if I adopt it, I've given them the blank deal of going ahead and doing it, and I don't quite agree with that. And there's some others in here that maybe I'll comment on, and maybe I'll get the thoughts of the others first. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, may I
You certainly can. Go ahead and answer.
address that? If we did anything, Councilor Jordan, maybe we went further in providing supplementary information that is really meant to support the document, but not the initial recommendations. The heart of this document is really in a very few pages. And if I can take a minute, I'll indicate what those pages are. On page 1 is a summary, and this addresses how the committee came about and what our charge was from the council back in August of 1991. We think we met those charges. We certainly met the deadlines that were imposed on us. Page 2 is the vision and the 8 goals to accomplish that vision. On pages 3, 4, and 5 are 37 recommendations as to how to make this happen. The only other 2 areas that I think should be considered a part of this is that the zoning map, which actually defines the area, is on a map just preceding page 12. And then the definition of the area in the first paragraph on page 12. And finally, Appendix C, which is on page 37, which is the draft town center zone. So if you concentrate just on those essential areas, we are not saying in there, recommending that the brush be cleaned up. There are a lot of things in here that we are offering as alternatives, things that might be implemented that the council could do to enhance the area. But essentially, the heart of this is the 37 recommendations, and incidentally, of those 37 recommendations, 30 of those recommendations can be accomplished with no charge to the taxpayers of Cape Elizabeth. And believe me, all of the members of that town center committee were taxpayers, are taxpayers in the town, and were as concerned as anybody else about any impact that this document would have on the town budget. Having said that, the remaining 7 items on there, at least half of those can be accomplished with some very innovative approaches. One of them, I cite as an example, is the grant request to PACS for the first phase of the sidewalk recommendation. And it's indicative of some things that can be done to save the taxpayers' money and still accomplish the vision that the concept that we are asking you. And as I say, if we erred, we put some what-if scenarios in there in a couple of places that showed you, how far you might go if you let your imagination run away. We could have scared you even more if we had taken some of the things that the charrette produced from the Northeast Regional Planners, and they weren't looking at budget constraints, so they did get pretty far out. But we think this is a very reasoned, objective approach as to how we can accomplish, how the town can accomplish the areas that we were charged with looking at by that town council back in 1991. Cleaning the brush isn't a recommendation in there. It is one of the areas, it is not one of the 37 recommendations.
Number 37,
It
Joe.
is.
37?
It is 37.
Dad corrected.
Somebody snuck it in at the
Okay,
end.
they did, but the heart of the thing is for you to recognize that this is a start for you to look at what can be done and what must be done, what ultimately will be done piecemeal if some long-range plan is not adopted now. This isn't the first committee that has addressed this issue, and you are still wrestling with the problem. And unless something is done, and done soon, committees down the road will be facing the same problem. I think this gives you a start, because as you look at what has gone on in the 18 months that this committee met, the things that have impacted on this zone, this 134 acres that we're talking about, 90% of which is owned by the town, which has town facilities on it. In that area, you've had certainly not a static situation, which didn't make our job any easier. You have, on both sides of the town hall, situations where changes are going to take place very imminently. You have the proposed addition to the schools. You have the problem you wrestled with at Scott Dyer Road and Route 77, which we address here as a possible solution for you. You have the changing of the owners of the shopping center. And so these are things that have just transpired in this 18-month period. By adopting this plan, rather than letting you folks wrestle with situations like that on a piecemeal basis, meeting after meeting, you have a long-range plan here that not only gives the town direction, it also helps encourage development in a very responsible way. It also helps developers to know what they can and cannot do. And in some instances, it even helps eliminate what tends to become an unwieldy or certainly a time-consuming permitting process. So there are a number of very essential elements in that, Councilor Jordan, that I think far outweigh any brush cutting or any other items that might, that you certainly are free to change at your discretion. And actually, a number of things were put in there to excite discussion and encourage other opinions on this. We had 2 public hearings. We did site walks. We had some 22 meetings of our own that were open to the public. And this is the result of the input that we got during that time, that what we heard from people, homeowners, taxpayers, and business people in the town that concerned them. We recognized that when we presented this, that we hoped we were giving the town a resource, and there is a tremendous amount of information there. I think it's very beneficial to the town, whether you accept it or not. I think I'm proud of the document, and I think the committee has done an excellent job on it. But we're not here to discuss the committee, we're here to discuss the report. We knew that there would be 2 or more reviews of this report, after it left our hands. And so I hear what you're saying, but I also hope that in considering this document, that you would look at the overall picture of what can be accomplished here. The concept is the important feature.
Thank you, Mr. Ford. Councilor Creelman.
Well, you know, when I read over this plan and the wonderful job that you've all done, in many ways I kind of conceptualized this plan very similarly to the Fort Williams master plan. I mean, these were basically two monumental events that took place in the town with an extraordinary amount of work and offered great wisdom to the town council. Where I got into difficulty was simply with the town manager's suggested motion. And I don't know, Mr. Foley, if you had an opportunity to review our town manager's recommended motion.
No, I did not.
You see, what the motion does is it takes this report really into the third millennium here, in the sense that basically we're going to be essentially referring to the Appointments Committee, the responsibility for developing a charge, and membership provisions for the proposed town center implementation committee. So really, I mean, accepting this motion, as Councilor Jordan suggests, is really creating a whole new group of people to implement all of these 37 ideas. And I mean, number 35 says expand the view of Thomas Memorial Library from Route 77 through land acquisition and/or realignment of the intersection. So, I mean, if people are given a charge to implement something, I mean, they've got to take these recommendations seriously. So I think that's part of the problem we're wrestling with tonight. I mean, it's one thing to accept the plan, it's another thing to adopt the plan, and it's another thing to charge all of these committees in town with the responsibility to put this into action. And that's where so many of the townspeople are saying, well, geez, you know, you're going to take this land by eminent domain and you're going to get everyone all jazzed up. So I just think we need to throw this motion out the window and just simply, you know, accept the work that you've done, have it available to us, and move when it's appropriate, when money's available, when all of those things are down the line. But I mean, I think if the town starts an initiative tonight by creating all these committees and changing everything all at once, we're going to be in a place of being forced to put these 37 items into action. That's where I have the problem.
The committee felt that the implementation aspect of it, Councilor Creelman, we felt was important because of the necessity to prioritize these items. It wouldn't make sense for us to go ahead with a new sidewalk project if 6 months down the road we were going to adapt the underground utility proposal, or if we left the utilities above ground as they now are and adopted, whether we did it or had developers put in a tree planting program and then had to ruin those trees with a pruning program to keep the wires clear. So we felt that the implementation committee was imperative to assure that this prioritizing be not only recognized, but then to ensure that it was done in the intent of the overall concept.
Well, I think if that's true, Mr. Foley, then we create a prioritizing committee. We don't create an implementation committee.
It's semantics.
Well, I'm not sure it is. I mean, you've not prioritized these 37 ideas right now. They're just basically put forth. These are not prioritized, is that correct?
We felt that was your prerogative.
Okay. Well, I agree, but I'm saying whoever does that, and to the extent that they do it, is going to start creating an issue every time we have budget season, because there is either going to be money available or not available to implement, based on the priority. Same thing with the master plan of Fort Williams.
Any other? Yes, Councilor Dahlbeck, yours has been up quite a while.
So far, I agree with almost everything almost everybody has said, including my good friend and neighbor, Joe Foley. I think the problem right now is with us. We have never had a workshop on this. We have never discussed any one of these items. I did attend, I guess it was the last public hearing that the Town Center Committee held. But but being from the town council, it was their public hearing, it was not my place to get in there and start shooting a lot of questions, and I hadn't read the report in the first place at that stage. I think before we can do anything with this, we've got to be in a position where we sit down and talk about some of these things and the practicality of them. I would like to see some more cost estimates. There are some areas here that just intrigue me, including, for example, the intersection of Scott Dyer and Route 77. I can think of all kinds of extreme things there, and I know this is a huge problem, looking at the elementary and middle school situation and the traffic flow there, and those tie in, but we haven't discussed any of this. And I, like Wayne, would have a very difficult time turning this over to some committee with something as loosey and goosey as this thing is at the moment, and say, go implement. They have to be very confused. I think we need to sit down and discuss this thing ourselves in detail, personally.
Thank you. Councilor Creelman?
Well-
Not Creelman, listen to me. Coggeshall?
No, I concur with Councilor Dalbeck. I told the manager I thought we were getting the cart before the horse, because we as a council have not sat down and discussed this. And I also had some sort of an indication or feeling that we needed to adopt something within a certain time frame in order to be eligible for money from the state. Is that still true? Is that why we're having this hearing now? We're all set on that $40,000. Okay.
Yes,
If
go ahead.
I, Mr. Chairman, my intent in drafting the suggested motion was to encourage the discussion that you're having this evening.
You did it?
Discussed it with Maureen last week, and I was very unclear as to what the council was being asked to do. And I think even tonight, there's been some discussion on, are you adopting the plan, you accepting it, how do you wish to begin implementation? And, in the discussions I had with Maureen, as well as with a couple of the councilors since this was mailed out last Wednesday, I think really indicate that the council does need to spend more time workshopping it. And, I think if you look at the specifics of what I had drafted here, it was to try to bring some attention to the recommendations, and that very certainly has happened. And it was trying to do it in such a way that also respected the tremendous work done by the committee.
Oh, I think they've done a great job.
Can I make one comment that somebody brought up? The one thing I didn't want, I had it on my notes here, the one thing that I wrote was, we are not advocating any eminent domain proceedings in there, and that's why I say concentrate on those half dozen pages that I mentioned. We certainly don't advocate that.
Okay, thank you.
I'll be brief. I just would like to hear from any other committee members who are here about their feeling about the report. I'm sure they'll be brief.
Why else would come?
We had a public hearing, Councilor Creelman.
He's a committee member.
In all fairness, Chairman Chappell and town councilors, we did not see, or at least I didn't see, what the proposed motion was, to know whether or not there should be any comments thereon. However, if I did, I probably would say, I agree with you, and perhaps it would behoove the council and the committee to have it tabled at this time, or to just throw out this particular motion, plan a joint workshop, and then you can have a subsequent one alone, and then adopt. I think last month, if I'm not wrong here, the council did accept the report from the committee with rave reviews. And I, on behalf, or at least my association with the committee, I'd prefer that it not be voted on tonight as far as adoption until everything is clear with the council and the committee.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilor McLaughlin.
How many do you want? Thank you, Chairman. I would move that we table action on this item until after there has been a workshop. I'm not going to say who needs to attend that workshop. I think we can feel that out later. I came prepared tonight to make that motion anyway. I do not feel that I have a clear enough understanding of all the ramifications of what's being proposed in this very thorough and very complex document. I personally need more time to go through this If you'd seen me searching my house last night to even find the document, you would understand that. And I don't want to in any way undermine the very good hard work that you folks have done on this. I know we've had 2 counselors serve on this committee. You folks are nicely up to speed. I need the time to get myself up to speed on this and to hear consensus and prioritizing from this council. I think Councilor Dahlbeck stated it very nicely. We still have work to do. The committee and the manager are very good at provoking discussion. You've done that very well, and we thank you for that. You've pointed out some areas where we need to buckle down and do our own work, and that's why I would like to move to table this item until after the council has had a workshop on it.
I'd second that.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Discussion.
Don't
Councilor
discuss
Jordan.
the table motion.
Can't.
You don't
No
discuss the
discussion.
table.
You don't have to?
You cannot.
I think correct this.
Where we at now? Joe?
We got to vote.
We need to vote on that.
The table.
You're not going to let the gentleman speak?
He's a little out of order.
Well,
No? Okay.
what's the wish of the council? I'm
Am
not...
I allowed to speak?
No, we're
Well,
not
we've
going to
got-
say, tell anybody they're not allowed to speak. As long as the council's happy, I am. Go ahead.
Will we have a motion to table?
Some of you may know I'm Bill Whitnell.
Make it brief.
I will. I thought that Councilor Creelman's observations were right on target, and it is important not to, accept and then adopt and charge others with implementing something that is still not that well defined and not prioritized. All those considerations will have to be evaluated in terms of budget. And he made another, Councilor Creelman made another observation that I thought was really to the point. He said that you would move when some of these things are appropriate. And before you leave this, when you consider what to do about the town center, I think it would be timely, and I would urge you to consider obtaining the land at the Irving Station, which is for sale. And if you're considering doing things in the long term to benefit the town, there's a piece of real estate right next to the town hall. And it's for sale, and it may not be for sale again for a long, long time. And that is something that I wish you would consider. It's, some of the land that is contemplated in the proposed town center plan is not for sale at this time. And now that may be something down the road, but I think you ought to consider that in the near future and strike while the iron's hot, as it were. And that's all.
Thank you. We, next time, we'll expect to hear from you during the public hearing, okay? Okay.
Sure. No, it was just a little bit, it went kind of quickly, and I didn't have a specific question for Mr. Foley, and that's why I didn't speak to him.
Okay. We have Councilor Jordan, are you ready with something?
Yes, if I may. I just want to say to Mr. Foley, I'm not here complaining about your document. I think it's a very good document. And I was against the adoption of this order here that I felt was pretty controversial. And I guess I was in the wrong after hearing from the rest of them, but I had no communications otherwise. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion? All those in favor of tabling? 7-0.
I wonder, now that we've tabled this, and this will come up, I guess, in a workshop in a not-too-distant future, I'd like to ask the town manager and town planner if they might give it their review and be able, for that workshop, to recommend their thoughts to us on what's easily done, what's cost money and would need additional investigation, and whatever other appropriate categories there might be.
Moving right along to item number 12, to consider a request from the Portland Symphony Orchestra to utilize Fort Williams Park and take any necessary action. Mr. McGovern.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
as president of the Portland Symphony Orchestra Board of Trustees, I'd ask that I be excused from this
You
discussion.
don't want to resign from them just for this vote.
Yeah.
No, I know it anyway. The Portland Symphony Orchestra is having a concert at Fort Williams on July 2nd, it's Friday night. It was standard in the past that they usually come for 3 concerts. This year, their plans didn't firm up as early as they had in the past. They now would like to request permission to come for a second concert on July 23rd. I've reviewed this with all the departments involved, and it's something we feel would be an enjoyable experience for the visitors and something that can be easily handled. Also, it did come in late to be reviewed at a meeting of the Fort Williams Advisory Commission, but it was sent out to all the members of the commission with a request for comment, and no negative comments were received back.
Councilor Jordan.
Mr. Chairman, I move that permission be granted.
I'll second.
Been moved and seconded that permission be granted. Any discussion? All those in favor? 7-0. 6-0. I got one down there that didn't want to vote, yeah. Item number 13, to consider a request for a utility line location on Woodland Road and take any necessary action. Mr. McGovern.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Northern Utilities has applied for utility location permit to install an underground gas line on Woodland Road extending from the South Portland line up to, and so that it would be able to serve the Woodland Apartments, the property where the Cottage Farm schools used to occur. A number of these properties are now have electric heat and are looking for efficiencies in moving over to gas heat, and I would urge that you approve this request.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? 7-0.
Yeah, Alan Davis was here representing the Woodland Apartments as well.
Item number 14, to consider authorizing carry-forward balances and take any necessary action. Mr. McGovern.
It's every June, the town council come before you requesting certain carry-forward balances. I've tried to be as descriptive as I could in this. In years past, most of them, we just gave you a list without any explanation. Because particularly there were a couple unusual ones here, including one for fire department equipment and particularly one for the wet team. I wanted you to be able to see the full description of what I was proposing. I'd be happy to go through the entire list if you desire, or any particular items if you wish.
Questions from Mr. McGovern? Entertain a motion?
I would move that we authorize the carry-forward balances.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion? All those in favor? Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I did want to ask Mr. McGovern about the Goddard Mansion stabilization account. You do have a note here that it has been carried forward annually for approximately 8 years. And I was wondering, are we going to do something with it, or is this just sitting there?
It's just sitting there. It is a fund just in case something should go wrong with the building that we might need to go up and do some work to it. The funds are just held there for that purpose. No special
There was
reason.
no plan for additional stabilization?
Not at this point, no.
Was there initially when that money was put in the account?
Can't remember
Was
that
Councilor
far back.
Carson under
The
that
hope is that
impression?
eventually something more would happen there, but, these funds wouldn't even provide for tearing it down, so thank goodness, some feel.
I can't think of anything that's going
I just had to make that comment for a former councilor's benefit.
She'll appreciate that.
Any other questions?
If I may, Mr. Chairman, I think what it was left up on fix the walls and what have you, they didn't really know at that time just how long that would stay so the water wouldn't get down there and freeze and spread them apart. That was the idea of it at the time, and I don't know whether we need an inspection of it and to see whether we should be thinking of doing something, or maybe we could use the funds in another way. I think it should be looked at.
Thank you, Councilor Jordan. You ready to vote? All those in favor? Wayne, are you in favor?
Yes, I am. I'm sorry.
7-0. Thank you.
Paying attention to something else here.
Number 15 item, to consider authorizing certain year-end transfers and take any necessary action. Mr. McGovern.
Yes, as the memo indicates, every year at this time, we review the different accounts to see if any of them may have a problem on June 30th. Generally, we have 5 or 6 accounts. This year, there was one that I reported you in the packet, and one other that is really looking iffy at this point. The one that's you had in your packet was Public Works. As you can see in the spreadsheet, which I think was in your packet, once we do the carry-forward balances for the sidewalks and the roads, and we look at the projected expenses through to the end of the month, we could be $5,000 short. The other area is in dispatching, which I want to review further with the chief. So far this year, we've had $103,000 worth of full-time payroll and $29,000 worth of overtime. And I'm becoming very alarmed at the amount of overtime amongst the dispatchers. Quite a bit of it, I think, relates to illnesses, but it needs an extensive review to see why it is over budget. But just as a safeguard, because I do need to do a little more projections on it, I'd ask that you authorize $5,000 for Public Works, account 310, and $5,000 for dispatching, account 220. Both of those would come out of the account indicated in your packet, the tax anticipation note account, I believe was the one I suggested.
I didn't get one.
You didn't get the spreadsheet?
No, all we got was your
Was that what it was supposed to be about?
Yeah. Did you get with the detail? You want me to briefly go through it for you?
I didn't.
You didn't get anything on dispatching, but what the full-time, I'll briefly go through it, very briefly. The full-time payroll is well under budget because we've had an employee who's been out for quite some time on workers' comp. Part-time payroll was over $2,600 out of a budget of $5,000. Overtime was $18,000 over, or 46% over budget. That's for obvious reasons. Vehicle maintenance was 23% over, again because of the winter. Salt was 33% over the budget, $12,000 because of the winter. And besides that, a lot of the accounts were under budget, but in the aggregate, we believe the account will be over by about $5,000. I'll photocopy it. You received it all. You received the monthly statements anyway. What you didn't receive was the one with my analysis at the bottom of where we're going to begin to have a problem.
Giving us your analysis.
I'm sorry, that's slipped out without it in it.
Well, I would move that we authorize this evening these particular year-end transfers.
I'll second.
Discussion? All those in favor? 7-0.
And I will give you a report on the dispatcher one. It is of concern.
Mr. Chairman, I'd move that we take two items out of order at this point. Items 17 and 18 this evening before we consider item 16.
Second that.
Yes.
All those in favor? 7-0. Item number 17, to consider burial fees for the Riverside Memorial Cemetery and take any necessary action. Deborah?
Thank you. You all should have received a recommendation from me in your packet to increase burial fees at Riverside Cemetery. Currently, we are in the second year of a 3-year contract for the burials at Riverside. Currently, we are in the first year of a new privatization or contracting program for the mowing at Riverside. When the town manager looked at the first bills for the mowing services, he found out that what we were paying for the burial fee plus the loaming and seeding, which is an additional fee because of the contract, that the town was actually losing $10 per burial that we did. And beyond that, we were not getting compensated for any administrative costs. When I looked at the bid for the mowing, the loaming and seeding could actually go up to $35, so we'd be losing $10 per burial at Riverside. So my proposed rates here, we would propose $200 for adult burials, $225 on the weekends, infant $100, cremades $110 and $125 on the weekend. I would recommend that these rates be effective immediately and until further notice. And what I mean by further notice is, again, we have one more year for the contract on the burial, and depending on what happens next year, whether it stays privatized or comes back to Public Works, et cetera, we'll have to look at it then to see again if we're losing or just making costs and so forth. So I would recommend these proposed rates.
I would move the recommendations of the town clerk.
I'll second.
Discussion?
Yeah, I just wanted to make clear that I don't want anyone to think that privatization increased our cost. To the contrary, it merely enabled us to recognize what our costs are. We always had the cost of looming and seeding. It's just that now that we're directly paying for it instead of indirectly, we understand much better cost components.
Thank you. Councilor Marvin?
I had a question on the years. It shows 92, 93, 94, and I thought that privatization occurred just this year.
That's right. For the 92, 93, 94 seasons, it's for the burial contract itself. We are in the first year of the mowing contract. They're two different.
Thank you.
Councilor Jordan?
No, I just want to, one thing that disturbed me when she made the statement, they actually found out that they were losing $10 a burial. So that's 165 to 175, and they proposed to go to 200. So this should be able to last for more than 1 year, if not 2 years or so. Could I figure it that way, or do you think the cost might go up a lot more? And 190 to 225, it's a pretty good increase. And maybe the administrative costs are higher than I figure they are.
If I might, when we looked at our administrative costs, we tried to analyze all the different points at which we get involved in this process and what cost might be. For instance, we get the call from the gravedigger, from the funeral home. That's the first contact. Number two, then we have to call the gravedigger to arrange the burial. That's two contacts. Number three, we need to coordinate the billing with the funeral home. Number four, we have costs for receiving payments, processing receipts, depositing checks are all included in our different bank charges. We also have a little bit of flexibility in there in case errors occur, which they do, in terms of something going wrong during the process, and we end up having to do something twice. It's happened, I think, twice in the last 15 years, but nonetheless, it's a cost that does need to be borne. Those are the types of administrative charges that we're looking at. And then there's the processing of the contracts for the grave digging, for the mowing, loaming, and seeding. You can say, what are your taxes for? But the whole principle of Riverside Cemetery is that it does serve as an enterprise fund, and that we ought to recover our costs, and that it should not be subsidized by tax dollars. And that's what we're attempting to do here. So we feel, including with postage and the time of the different personnel involved, that the $25 is not unreasonable. And if we do receive further cost in future years increases, that we're apt to come back and propose changes in rates to reflect cost, whether they should go up or down. And that the administrative costs for a while would stay right around the 25.
How are we compared to other communities? Reasonable?
From what I'm told, we're on the low side.
On the low side?
Still, yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions? We have a motion, and it's been seconded. All those in favor? 7-0. Item number 18, to consider a report from the Appointments Committee regarding vacancies on the Recycling Committee and Conservation Commission, and take any necessary action. Councilor Creelman.
Yes, I'm delighted this evening to put before you the names of two individuals to join our committees. Mandy Garmy is recommended to serve the unexpired term of Bonnie Wright on the Recycling Committee. This term would expire March 1st, 1996. Mandy Garmy is a nurse in the Cape Elizabeth school system. She's a past advisor and founder of SEA, Students for Environmental Action at Cape Elizabeth High School, and she also has coordinated Earth Day in 1991 and 1992. I have spoken personally to Ms. Garmy, as well as the chairperson of the Recycling Committee, for whom she is highly recommended. and I'm going to move that both of these go together. The second individual, Mr. Gregory Toot, in talking to him, it seems as though the match hasn't worked out well with regard to the Board of Health. He wanted to be extremely involved in the town and very much was looking forward to serving in a more active role, and I have put forward his name to replace Jean Ginn Marvin, who will have to resign from the Conservation Commission now that she is a member of the Town Council. So implicit in appointing Mr. Toot to the Conservation Commission, he will be resigning from the Board of Health. And I would recommend both of these individuals. Mr. Toot's term would expire also on March 1st, 1996.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor? 7-0.
Related question. When do we bury the Board of Health?
That's going to be coming up as soon as possible.
Yeah, I had a meeting, about 3 weeks ago with the Board of Health at which we discussed their upcoming disposition. But it will be coming to the Town Council as part of a more comprehensive report, but they did concur, the members who were there, that should be its fate.
Will that be a full-fledged burial?
Item number 16, to consider entering into executive session to discuss property acquisition, disposition issues, and take any necessary action.
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we enter into executive session to discuss the potential acquisition and disposition of land which is involved in ongoing litigation and an additional land acquisition matter.
Second.
All those in favor? 7-0. We'll go into executive session. Janet, will you straighten me out on this one so when I have this, I'll know what to do from now on? Do we have to have this citizens' discussion to finish this meeting and then adjourn to get into executive session?
You adjourn when you come out of executive session. I think the fact that there are no citizens in the audience makes it a moot point.
So we can adjourn actually when we're there, so we're not here?
No, we come back into formal session to adjourn.
You don't have to have a citizen discussion at the start of the council meeting and at the end of it. This is one of the big issues for years.
Should change the
And they had it at the end for years, and they said it should be at the start of the meeting, where anybody can come in and have a chance of it. And I think it's something we should look at and bear with everyone.
We're going into executive session.
You want to go down the cafeteria? It'll be cool.